How's it going? Adam Drake here, and today I'm going to show you the steps for not only mounting and installing a new HOBBYWING system into a Mugen MBX8R, but I'm also going to go through and just show you kind of some tips, just how I go through and solder and mount everything up. I have my race car here, where you can see I have the HOBBYWING XR8 Pro G3 ESC with the HOBBYWING 2200 kV motor. The system that I'm going to be putting in today is for a local racer that purchased a system from us. I just wanted to do a video on it and let them know that I would go ahead and mount this up. So they are going with the XR8 Pro G3 ESC with 1900 brushless motor. So we'll get to it. I'll change the camera angle and I will take their car and we will start by first mounting everything, and then we'll go ahead and solder everything up, and I'll go through the process of doing that. Okay, so we're going to start by unboxing the ESC. Like I said, they went with same ESC that I use in both electric buggy and truck, which is the XR8 Pro Gen 3. So we'll do a little quick unboxing here, show you what you get. So you end up getting the ESC and, for the most part, everything needed for mounting. You get the manual, sticker sheet, ESC wires for both going to the motor and also to the battery. They wanted to use pink wire, so we're going to use some pink wire and possibly some of the black wire here. As far as the external power capacitors, this is something that's not needed. I do use it for electric truck, but I don't use it for electric buggy. It's just basically a power bank, stores extra power in the capacitors here. So if you're on a really high bite condition, or if the track is really high bite and you land a jump, it just has a little bit of extra stored power to provide that to the ESC. Again, it's not required for this. We're not going to use it. I think it just is a little bit cleaner, but it's pretty cool that HOBBYWING provides that just in case you need it. We'll also go ahead and open up the motor here. And I kind of go back and forth between 1900 and 2200. For the most part, I run the 2200 motor. And then if it's too much for some conditions, you can always turn it down or dial down the ESC settings. But the 1900 is also a really good option and very popular for buggy. So one thing I like to do is just kind of look over everything, inspect it, check the end play. For the most part, there's nothing that you really need to do to the motor, but it's nice just to kind of check everything over. I am going to go ahead and install the sensor wire now, just because it's a little bit easier to do that now compared to when it's actually mounted in the car. I also like to take a 1.5 MIP wrench and then just kind of make sure the sensor wire is fully pushed in, and then the motor can be set aside for right now. As far as the ESC goes, it is super important to use some type of gel tape. So what I have here are two options from Mugen. This is kind of like a standard servo tape. It is a gel tape, but it's very thin. And then we have this thicker gel tape. And then Kyosho also makes two versions of gel tape. a blue and a green. Green is obviously thicker. I normally use the Kyosho gel tape. The one problem is the adhesive on the Kyosho gel tape. You need to remove it before using it. And if you're going to use Kyosho gel tape, I recommend cleaning your pit board with brake cleaner, sticking it down and removing the adhesive, and then you'll actually just glue the gel tape to the ESC, and then the other side of it you will then glue to the mounting area. We're going to use the Mugen tape because the adhesive is much better. Again, it's not quite as thick, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add a couple of additional layers to make it thicker, like what the Kyosho style is. So you don't necessarily need to fully cover this area. Obviously, you want to make sure that enough of the area is covered so that it does stick down good, but you don't need to do the whole area. So I'm going to go ahead and put 4 layers. So there's the second layer. Peel off the backing here. And then we'll do 2 more layers. And what this will do, you'll see once we have it mounted, that it just allows any impact or hard landings to be absorbed, and this to basically work as a damper or like a shock absorber for the electronics. And that will just substantially help and increase the life of your electronics. So there we have the final piece. And then now you can see it's really thick, just like the Kyosho gel tape. And then hopefully you can see there, like when I push down, just how soft that tape is. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and secure the switch to the side. So I'm going to secure the switch just using the thinner gel tape from Mugen. And just to make it nice and clean, we'll cut off any excess. And then I'm going to go ahead and curl the wire for the switch, just so it kind of looks nice, and that way there's no excess wire that can kind of hang out the side guard of the car. So the other thing that's really nice about not putting the servo tape, make sure that's kind of straight, is not having the servo tape fully under this whole area, is you can kind of tuck the wires and make them look really neat and actually almost go underneath the ESC without getting pinched because you have so many extra layers there. So now if you want it, you can go ahead, we can mount the ESC in the car and then we can solder everything in the car, or if you want, you can actually start to you can start by putting all the wires on now and just leaving a little bit of excess, trimming them later. I'm going to go ahead and tin each of the 3 motor areas and the battery areas, and then I'm going to go ahead and install this into the car, and I will do a little bit of a time lapse for that so I don't bore you while I'm doing all that, and then we will start back up with the actual soldering of the ESC and motor and mounting the motor into the car. So it looks like the time lapse didn't work, but all I really did was route the wire from the ESC to the receiver, plugged it into the receiver. You want to make sure when you're routing that wire that it can't come in contact or isn't anywhere close to the spur gear, or where it can be pinched or cut. So ESC has not been secured down yet. We're going to go ahead and do that now. And then we will start by next installing the motor, and then we will start soldering everything up. So again, you just want to be careful, make sure that the wires can't get kind of hooked or caught on anything or pinched and damaged. So we're going to go ahead, make sure that's straight, secure it down, and then again, you can see here the ESC can actually move and rock, and that's actually good because you want to make sure when there is a hard impact or you case a big jump that that impact isn't directly going into the ESC. So by having a few extra layers of that gel tape, everything can move around nice. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn up the soldering iron here and just go ahead and tin all 5 posts. So we're going to start with the negative battery post. The 3 motor tabs. And then one thing I'm going to do right before I actually secure and get the motor all the way in is I'm going to go ahead and put the sensor wire into the ESC also, because once all the wires are in the way, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that. So next, I'm going to take the motor mount and kind of figure out the orientation we want. One thing I do like to do is apply a little bit of thread lock to the screws for securing the motor to the mount. Doesn't take much, but just a little bit of thread lock will help make sure that this doesn't come loose. Make sure those are super tight. And then we'll do the pinion gear here in a little bit. Again, just like to check the motor, make sure everything moves freely. And then let's go ahead and put the sensor wire, plug this into the ESC. Again, just makes it easier to make sure you can get it all the way in and secure it before you have other wires in place. And obviously HOBBYWING makes tons of different length sensor wires. We could use a much shorter one here. For now, I'm going to just see how this looks once we get everything mounted. If needed, I will change to a shorter sensor wire if needed, but for now we're just using the sensor wire that comes with the motor. So again, a little bit of thread lock on the screws going into the motor mount. Then we will turn the orientation of the motor to where we can see the flat side of the motor shaft. And even on the pinion, I'm going to apply just a little bit of thread lock. And one thing also to check for, some pinion gears come with a set screw that does not have a flat surface. It's more of like a cut point. If that is the case, you'll want to grind that using a cutoff wheel to make sure that you have a flat. That way, the flat on the set screw matches up and mates with the flat on the motor shaft so that you have more contact area. So we make sure that the pinion and spur gear line up. Then we're going to go ahead really quick and set the gear mesh. Check it in a few spots, and then you can go ahead and crank everything down. Once it's all cranked down, I like to just check it one more time, and we should be good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and tin the motor tabs here. I guess I will start by doing the motor wires. So they wanted to make sure I used this pink wire, but I want to go ahead and kind of clean all this up. So I'm going to cut and then start fresh. I use just the stock wire that comes from HOBBYWING. It seems to hold up really good. I've had really good luck with it. And then it looks nice and clean, being that all the wires are black. It just matches and kind of looks really nice. So now I need to tin all three of these motor wires. And one thing I like to do, so when I'm tinning the wire, I try to hold the wire down, because if you're holding the wire up like this when you're tinning it, that solder starts to like basically flow back into this area, and it just makes it much stiffer. And then I've had it to where sometimes you don't see that the wire is damaged because it's so rigid into the silicone area. So if you hold the wire down, that solder will flow down. And then you'll want to turn this and then check and make sure that you have solder all the way around. I'm actually going to use this here to kind of hold the solder, make it a little easier for me. Okay, so those new ends are going to be what goes onto the ESC. So we will start with A. The only thing you really have to kind of be careful of here is the fan wires are there, so you just want to be mindful, make sure that you don't hit the fan wires with the ESC. And then if these wires have been tinned nice, and then also the ESC is already tinned, you just want to make sure, kind of twist it, make sure that all blends together. Hold it there for a few seconds, and then you should have a pretty good solder joint. This one I could use a little bit more solder. And then you also want to be careful that you don't use too much solder so that you can actually get in, remove this plug, and be able to get in to adjust any programming with the ESC. So we'll take the final wire here. So that I stay away from the center drive shaft, I'm going to actually route these wires towards the back, and then it'll also shorten these wires quite a bit from what they've got right now. So we'll go ahead and start with A, cut that to the length that we want, strip it back, and then tin it. It's going to be a little harder to tin this by holding it down, just because I guess it'll work okay, but a little bit more difficult. Got a little more solder there. Because this is hot, I'm going to grab it with some pliers. And we will take B, do the same, just kind of route it to where everything looks clean and is fairly equal length. And then obviously repeat the same step for C. Figure out what we're going to do here with the sensor wire. So again, the ideal thing would be just to use a shorter sensor wire, but because this is what it came with, we will try to just route and make this look as nice as possible by zip tying it to the 3 motor wires here. I'm going to change the angle of this wire just a little bit so it makes it a little easier to get in there to adjust the programming. That way I have plenty of space to be able to get the programming box into there. And then customer had asked to use pink for the positive and then black for the negative battery wire. So and then go ahead and install that. And then take the negative battery wire. So a lot of this is obviously pretty repetitive, but just kind of wanting to do a step-by-step walk you through from start to finish. Okay, so now I'm going to get the Protect battery so that we can kind of check the length of the battery wires for the bullets, and we will move on to that next step. Okay, so the final step's going to be to solder the power wires to the bullets and make sure it's the proper length for the battery that's being used. So this customer has both Protect batteries and another brand where the positive and negative is flipped on the other brand. So they asked, can I make the wires long enough to be able the Protect battery to work as well as their other batteries? So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to make it look super nice because of having to have the excess wire, but we'll see what we can come up with here. I went ahead and kind of trimmed these to the length that I thought would work for both, and we'll see how it comes out. So again, just tinning the end of the wire, and then what I'm going to do is install the bullet into the battery, but just barely put it into the battery. It doesn't need to be pushed all the way down, just kind of started into the battery. We'll do that for both of these. I'll go ahead and tin both of these bullets. And then let's see how we're going to do this. So again, we need to make sure that this positive lines up and fits for the Protect battery and also for the other battery that they have. And we'll go ahead and turn this bullet. Okay, so now I can go ahead, push the bullets all the way down, make sure everything looks nice and clean. Like I said, it would be nice if this could be a little bit shorter, but knowing that this needs to be able to fit on the other side in case another battery is used, that's just kind of how we had to do it. Also, it would be nice to use the slightly shorter sensor wire, but just wanted to go ahead and use what came with the ESC and then also the wires that the customer provided. Normally I just use, like I mentioned earlier in the video, the HOBBYWING 11 gauge wire. This wire is pretty massive. It makes it a little bit difficult to solder. It seems like when you go to solder wire that's that big, it would almost be nice to have a slightly larger tip on the soldering iron. The tip here on the ProTech soldering iron is perfect if you're using the 11 gauge. And again, it works perfect for this. It's just, it would be nice to have a little bit more surface area because of the larger surface area for this larger wire. But now I will go ahead and just go through the programming of the ESC, put kind of my baseline settings, and then allow the customer to adjust a little bit from there. One of the things that I did, obviously, in the very beginning was securing the switch. One thing that I'm going to do before I finish up here, because it's so important, if this switch comes off and can drag behind the car, gets cut, falls off, obviously causes problems. You can't turn the car on or off. You can't program it anymore. So the Mugen tape holds up really, really good. But just as another layer of security, I'm going to take just a little bit of shugu that I have here on the end of my X-Acto knife, and I'm going to just put just a really, really small bead on the edge of the switch there, and then also on the top side of the switch to make sure that the switch is fully secured and will not come off the ESC. So just something I like to do, because it's not like I'm going to take the switch off and want to remount it or whatever. This is kind of the standard orientation that I like to use. So you just want to make sure that that switch can't come off. And hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully this will help you mount your HOBBYWING ESC and motor into any vehicle that you have. Like I said here, we have a Mugen MBX8R Eco. And hopefully you enjoyed this video. And if so, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe.